Everybody awake, live, ready to go? I read an article this week by a lady named Becca Crespo, and it was really talking about what it means to have a winning mindset. I was thinking about, our theme. We're talking about spring training, preparing to be the best. And one of the things that's required is successful people just have a winning mindset. In other words, when they approach situations, they look at it uniquely different from people who are mediocre or below average. There's data that backs that up. In other words, it's literally how you view a problem affects what you do. Because I've always said your thoughts lead to your actions. So if your thoughts are junky, if your thoughts are messed up, then your actions are going to follow that thought. And that's a pretty logical statement. If my mind looks at a problem or an issue or a challenge and immediately goes south, then I'm going to follow with my behavior. I'm going to have a bad attitude. I'm going to just want to get it done. I want to finish. I want to get this over with and get it done. If I have a winning attitude, I'm going to look at ways where I can overcome this. I can rise above this. I can do it in a way that is excellent. And so that's really the crest of the article talking about 10 things. But what I want to kind of hone in on is really, to me, it's really succinct and it's really good information. One of the points about people who have a winning mindset is that they're coachable. And it doesn't matter what sport you follow. It doesn't matter if you're learning archery, if you want to be a better fisherman, if you want to be a great soccer player, if you want to be good at baseball, football, basketball, or golf, you need a coach. And what I'm saying by that is successful people have this understanding that there's always room for improvement. You see, somebody who's mediocre tends to be defensive. If you try to give them advice, have you ever tried to tell your kids something and they're not doing very good at an activity and you try to tell them, what do they immediately do sometimes when they're young? Anybody ever coach teenagers? Anybody ever have a teenager? Anybody alive in the room? Yeah, so what do they say? What's the two-word quote?
I know.
I know. I know. Move your hands up. I know. No, you don't. If you knew, you would be doing it correctly. Or you would be excelling at this, and really, you're not. So when you try to give feedback to a person who's not open to it, then there's conflict, and they don't really learn. But here's the irony. The irony is sometimes people who perform below average are the people that resist feedback or improvement. And what I want you to know is successful people are always open to improvement and feedback and coaching. Like, I want to learn. I want somebody who's better than me to teach me how to do something. And so one of the things about being coachable is it doesn't matter. You can watch golf on the weekend, or you can go to a golf tournament. We just had one last weekend in Fort Worth. If you go prior to the tournament and you go sit and you watch the range, what do every one of those PGA golfers have when they're doing their warm-ups? They have a swing coach. They've got a monitor that's measuring their ball speed and the angle of their club and all this data that they're getting. But they have a guy that's standing there the whole time. Have you ever seen them on the putting green before a tournament? What do they have? They got a coach, right? And they're going through these drills. And it doesn't matter who it is. It could be Tiger Woods had a golf coach. He had a swing coach all the time. If you go to an MLB game and you go to pregame batting practice, you watch those guys. They're just taking swings in the cage. When they come out of the cage, if you'll pay attention, there's always somebody standing behind the cage with a group of 3 or 4 hitters. Who is that? It's the hitting coach. And they're fine-tuning their game, like literally mid-season. They're 60 games in, and maybe they're having trouble with something. They're having trouble with a certain pitch. They walk around behind the cage, and they have a conversation with their coach. Why? Because they want to get better, right? They want to have success. And people who want to be successful are open to coaching. They know that there's room for improvement. And I always find it ironic that people sometimes resist feedback as if, man, I got it all figured out. I got this. I don't need you to tell me anything. And that is a terrible way to be successful. We have training here. We have to sometimes prod people to go. We have people that are willing to mentor and help. And it's like, I don't need that person to help me. Dude, you can't succeed at a high level. I have a coach. Jimmy has a coach. We have people that we meet with on a regular basis. And there's three things. And I've told you, I'll be really concise on these 3 points. But being coachable means that I'm open to feedback. My daughter was home this week from Baylor. She leaves today to go back. But I told her in the time span she was home, I said, hey, if you can find some time, I would like to do an activity with just you and I. I want to spend some time with you. And so she decides Sunday what she wants to do. She said, how about you teach me how to cook a steak? I don't really know anything about cooking a steak. So we planned that. That was our activity. We had a date last night. We started from scratch. We went to the market. I showed her what I look for when I pick a good steak. And so we went to the counter and we picked a couple of really nice steaks. We went home. I told her how to build the fire. We went in the kitchen. We talked about preparing the steak, leaving it out, what we did, how we seasoned it. And then I showed her how we cooked it. And they were awesome. And she literally gets through with her meal and she goes, that's the best steak I've ever had. And I'm like, well, I just got lucky. You know, just got lucky. But what was the reason that went well? What was the reason? Well, whose idea was that? It was her idea. Instead of going out to eat or going, doing something else, she said, Dad, I'd like you to teach me how to cook a steak. So the first thing you have to do to be coachable is you got to be open to feedback. It wasn't like I walked in a room and said, hey, let me teach you how to be a better dancer, because I'm not the expert. She would be the expert on that subject. Or can I give you some feedback? If she didn't have an openness about it, it's not going to be effective. So here's the deal. If you're an older person and you've got a guy that you're trying to mentor, one of the best questions that you can always ask is, hey, if I want to tell Garrett something, if I observe something about Garrett's behavior and I go to him and I have some thoughts or ideas on how he could be better, one of the things that I should do first is go, hey, Garrett, are you open to some feedback? Because once he agrees, what does that tell me? He just told me I'm open. What do you got? Right? I'm coachable. I'm moldable. I'm willing to learn. And in those moments, you really have an opportunity. And so don't be resistant, guys. Don't be resistant to somebody else trying to give you advice. I would tell you, be proactive. Go look for somebody who's further down the line than you. And I'm not just limiting this to your career. I'm talking about in life. If there's somebody you look up to who's a great dad, or somebody who you look up to who is really good at managing their money, go to that person and go, hey, could I meet with you? I'd like to learn a few things. And ask. It's just like my daughter. Hey, can you teach me how to cook a steak? You need to go to somebody and go, hey, can you teach me how to manage my money? Be open to feedback. Number 2, be willing to learn from others. So open to feedback's one thing. So if I tell Garrett 3 things that I observed about him that I think could be improved, that's just feedback. That's me giving him data, right? Where does transition happen? Where does change happen? This is where kids struggle, honestly. Because from birth, if you get those big orange bats and you take your little kid out in the backyard, he develops terrible habits, right? Because he's just grabbing the bat any way he can. You're throwing a ball that's about this big and the barrel of the bat's this big around. And he's hitting it over your fence, which is 20 feet away. And he's like, oh man, I'm awesome. And so he goes through his life and he holds the bat like this. And it worked when he was in diapers, right? But then he gets to higher levels and all of a sudden this doesn't work. But what does it do? It feels comfortable, right? Because I've been doing this since I was little. And when you're a swing coach and you go, hey man, I need you to turn your hands till your knuckles line up. I need you to get your arms in. One of the funniest things when I go and I watch Little League Baseball, which I still love. If somebody has a kid playing, I love it to come watch. But I hear about 80% of dads in the stands, and they say this, get your elbow up. And I just go, I just want to throw up in my mouth. Because that is in opposition to everything that has to happen in a baseball swing. You want to get your elbow tucked, not your elbow up. And there's guys in the big leagues, and they'll watch it. But look, it's usually the Dominican players, they have crazy stances. But they grow up with a broomstick hitting bottle caps. Right? They can stand on their head and hit your 98-mile-an-hour fastball. And the reality is, you can start wherever you want, but fundamentally, when you say get your elbow up, you're creating an extra step, right? For all you baseball guys in the room. Because where do you want to end up? Where's your elbow need to end up? Here. Same in golf, right? You go to a golf instructor and they tell you to turn your hands. What does it feel like when you first do it? It feels terrible. It doesn't feel comfortable. It feels really awkward when I go and have a golf lesson because they move my hands around. And then they tell me to hold the club lightly. I don't hold anything lightly. I squeeze my steering wheel going down the road. Like I don't know. I'm just wired that way. So I grab a bat. I hold it soft. I'm like, okay, I'll trust you. You're not going to let it go. You're naturally going to squeeze it. Feels weird, right? But when I got somebody who's better than me, when I got a guy who's a exceptional coach that's had a lot of success, and he goes, dude, if you'll do this, it really works. And I resist it. What am I saying? Man, I'm not willing to learn. Because what does willingness to learn mean? I'm going to try. Listen, that's all I'm saying. I say this to people all the time. They come to me for advice, and I say, look, I'll make a deal with you. Do this for 90 days. If it doesn't work, come back and we'll talk about it. Right? Isn't that a fair proposition? Is it fair for somebody to go, hey, I got some feedback for you. Try this. And you're not willing to try? What does it say? You're not open. You're not wanting to learn and grow. You've got to do the uncomfortable grip thing if you really want to be good at golf. And I see people that are just hackers, and they'll be hackers forever because they don't care about their golf swing. They just go out there, drink beer, have fun. That's fine too. You don't do that, it's awesome. Everybody doesn't have to be a great golfer. But if you want to go win, and you want to be the best at something, you got to be willing to try different things. All right? Don't get set in your ways so hard that if somebody goes, you know, if you changed your presentation to a homeowner, you would have more success. And you go, no, I got my own presentation. Be open. Try it. Try it for 30 days. You see, the problem is, here's the problem. If you think that you try what somebody else says, that you're admitting that your way was wrong. Really, what you ought to be thinking is maybe their way is better. It's not that your way is wrong. It's maybe that their way is better or more efficient or more productive. One of the things that we learned in our meeting yesterday, where I have a meeting with a group of people, and my coach, Nikki, one of the things that he said yesterday is if you want to ever consider someone else's point of view, you have to vacate your own. And he said that doesn't mean you change your belief system, but it means temporarily I'm willing to walk next to somebody shoulder to shoulder and see what they see. Does that make sense? But sometimes we hold so hard to what our position is that we go, there's no way that anybody can ever teach me anything new. And that keeps us from learning. It cripples the process of learning. Last thing, be receptive to constructive criticism. Be receptive to constructive criticism. So be open to feedback, willing to learn, and be receptive to constructive criticism. When someone you trust tells you you're doing something that isn't very good for you, don't be defensive. I know it's human nature. If I go, dude, that's not the right way to do that, or you shouldn't talk to somebody that way, or whatever. But if it's constructive in the context of a healthy relationship and you trust the person, there's some people in my life that can come up to me and tell me with brutal honesty, dude, that I'm out of line, or I need to work on this, or I'm being harsh, or that's not fair. I need to be open to that if I want to change, if I want to grow. You got to be receptive, because criticism leads to what? And I don't mean they're calling you names. It just means that I'm being critical of what you're doing, but in a way that's constructive. That's why it's called constructive criticism. It's not hateful. I tell my sons that all the time. I'm God, when I give you advice, you need to know my end goal is for your life to be better. I don't ever tell you. I had a hard conversation with one of my kids this week, and I don't wake up and go, man, I'm just going to rail them today. I brought them into the world. I love them. I would lay my life down for them. So when I go, I think you're wrong. I think that's a bad choice. What's my motive? I want them to get better. So think about it that way. Be receptive when someone points out something that you're doing wrong. It's not always bad. All right? Guys, listen, bottom line, are you coachable or you're not? You know the answer to that. You want to get better? Be coachable. Have a good day.